A story is told of a target practice with F-15 jets in the US Air Force. What would happen is that the squadron leader would be flying with two other planes alongside of him. He would shoot out two flares ahead of him and then rise his plane up to an altitude to allow the other two either side of him to then start shooting at the flares which he had launched as a form of practice. On this occasion, something went terribly wrong, and after shooting at the flares, the squadron leader experienced vertigo. Vertigo is a flying condition of being disorientated, simply losing bearing of your orientation. His plane had flipped upside down, and as he had pulled up to go higher, he was actually hurtling at hundreds of miles per second, hurtling towards the ground. And it was at this point that the indicator light on his plane started flashing. He thought it was broken. He was sure he was going higher. He was actually hurtling towards the ground. Now, every F-15 jet comes with two indicator lights as to one's height. And that's when the second indicator started flashing. Pull up, you're about to hit the floor. Signaling now to the other two pilots either side of him, he said, "Please authenticate my position." And they said, "You're flying upside down, you're hurtling towards the ground, pull up." Now imagine what the pilot has to do now. His intellect is telling him he's actually the right way up and he's going higher. But his instructions and his faith is telling him he's hurtling towards certain death. He has to push his lever forwards, not pull back, but push forwards in an act of faith that is totally in complete opposition to everything his intellect knows. This story has a happy ending. He does so acting on faith, turns the plane the correct way up, and then is able to avert the disaster. In this week's Torah portion, we're introduced to an incredible law that says follow the instructions of your elders and leadership, whatever they tell you, to the right or to the left, yamin usmol. Let me ask you a question. If you were in that cockpit, would you have been able to have averted the disaster and pushed the lever forwards instead of backwards? Sometimes our intellect tells us everything is so clear-cut and straightforward. And that's when the Torah comes in and says there are moments of faith where we are given advice, instruction, perhaps even help. And although it might not seem to be what we want to hear, with faith, it can absolutely be what we need to follow. Shabbat Shalom.